Hello, 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 greetings, salutations, konnichiwa, and every other form of greeting across this vast, marvelous multiverse. I am Matsu Quinox. This is Horse, and welcome back, my dear, marvelous, wonderful scholars, to the study. Hello there, hello there, hello there! Hello there, Julian20. Congratulations on getting first. Hello there, Cool Skeleton. Welcome. Hello there, Dr. Zadium. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Julian20, bowing deeply. Am I? Or are you? I can't tell because I can't see you. Oh, my goodness. Oh, how is everyone this fine afternoon, evening, morning, twilight, midnight, whatever manner of time it is? How are you all doing? I should really get a better thesaurus. Julian20, beyond wonderful. Can one beyond? Can one go beyond wonderful? Cool Skeleton, hooray, I can stay for a bit. Movie night time has been bumped up a bit. Oh, interesting. Well, I'm glad to have you here, Cool Skeleton. Dr. Zadium doing well. Oh my goodness. Good, 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 good. Sorry, I'm just a bit silly today. I'm doing fine myself. Can't report anything unusual in the study today. Firefly, hello there, Firefly. Welcome, 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 and welcome back, all you dear scholars, to the study. Cool Skeleton, what are we reading today, Matsu? Fine question that. Well, today, my dear scholars, we are reading Robert Louis Stevenson's Kidnapped. It's an adventure story involving quite a bit of interesting history behind it. Um, it was I don't even when was this book published? Hold on one second. I'll look at my copy. Audible gasp. Darth Matsu, I can actually watch a stream. I have a girlfriend now, so I can spend a lot of my nights FaceTiming. Oh, congratulations! Wonderful to hear. Um, that's a wonderful thing to hear, Darth. I don't think I have. This does not have a copyright in it. Oh, congratulations on the 3 stream streak, Julian20. I'm sure you're much more than that, but oh well. Uh, but yes, Kidnapped is one of Robert Louis Stevenson's other better known works, alongside, of course, Treasure Island and The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which sometime I should read. Never thought of reading that one. Robert Louis Stevenson wrote quite a bit of these sort of adventure historical romances. I have a copy of one of his other books somewhere called The Black Arrow, which is of another interesting little historical tidbit. Oh, hello there, Kinshon. Welcome. And this is a special reading tonight since this book that I have in my hand was was given by one of our fellow scholars to me. So I am reading the copy that a certain dear fairy tale wolf sent me. So this is a special copy for us tonight, of which I am internally indebted. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I've never actually read this book. I have heard things about it. I especially have heard what the critics at the time said about it, which I will get to probably after we've finished reading it. But it should be an interesting read. So, my dear scholars, are you ready to venture back in time for an adventure unlike any others? Kintron, glad Virgil and Ovid got it there to you. Yes, yes, I am eternally grateful. Although I think Virgil tried to hide it. Virgil, I don't know what is with Virgil and his love of practical jokes. Darth, I've missed so many streaming, I have to be extra punny to make up for missed streams. Kidding, I'm kidding, or am I? Oh my goodness, no more puns. I don't need puns tonight. No, 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 no. No. The Helium 20, yes, please. Alright. Alright then. So sit back, my dear scholars. Sit back, relax, have a hot or cold beverage. dim the lights if possible, and let us begin our reading of Robert Louis Stevenson's Kidnapped. I'm going to skip the dedication page just because. Chapter 1. I set off upon my journey to the house of Shaws. I will begin the story of my adventures with a certain morning early in the month of June, the year of grace 1751, when I took the key for the last time out of the door of my father's house. The sun began to shine upon the summit of the hills as I went down the road, and by the time I had come as far as the manse, the blackbirds were whistling in the garden lilacs, and the mist that hung around the valley in the time of the dawn was beginning to arise and die away. Mr. Campbell, the minister of Essendine, was waiting for me by the garden gate, good man. He asked me if I had breakfasted, and hearing that I lacked for nothing, he took my hand in both of his and clasped it kindly under his arm. "Well, Dave, lad," said he, "I will go with you as far as the ford, to see you on the way." I'm doing a pirate accent for some reason. I don't mean to do that. And we began to walk forward in silence. "Are ye sorry to leave Essendine, Dean?" said he after a while. "Why, sir," said I, "if I knew where I was going, or what was likely to become of me, I would tell you candidly. Essendine is a good place indeed, and I have been very happy there, but then I have never been anywhere else. My father and mother, since they are both dead, I shall be no nearer to in Essendine than in the kingdom of Hungary. And to speak truth, I thought I had a chance to better myself where I was going. Yeah. And to speak truth, if I thought I had a chance to better myself where I was going, I would go with a good will." "Aye," said Mr. Campbell. "Very well, Davy. Then it behooves me to tell your fortune all so far as I may. When your mother was gone and your father, the worthy Christian man, began to sicken for his end, he gave me in charge a certain letter, which he said was your inheritance. 'So soon,' says he, 'as I am gone, and the house is redd up and the gear disposed of, all which Davy hath been done, give my boy this letter into his hand, and start him off to the house of Shaws, not far from Cramond. That is the place I came from,' he said, 'and it's where it befits that my boy should return. He is a steady lad, your father said, and a canny goer, and I doubt not he will come safe, and be well liked where he goes.'" "The house of Shaws!" I cried. "What had my poor father to do with the house of Shaws?" "Nay," said Mr. Campbell, "who can tell that for a certainty? But the name of that family, Davy boy, is the name you bear. Balfour of Shaws, an ancient, honest, reputable house, peradventure in these latter days decayed. Your father, too, was a man of learning, as befitted his position. No man more plausibly conducted school, nor had he the manner or the speech of a common dominie. But, as ye will yourself remember, I took a pleasure to have him to the manse to meet the gentry, and those of my own house, Campbell of Kinrenant, Campbell of Dunswire, Campbell of Minch, and others, all well-kenned gentlemen, had the pleasure in his society. Lastly, to put all the elements of this affair before you, here is the here is the testamentary letter itself, superscribed by the own hand of our departed brother." He gave me the letter, which was addressed in these words: "To the hands of Ebenezer Balfour, Esquire, of Shaws, in his house of Shaws. These will be delivered by my son, David Balfour." My heart was beating hard at this great prospect now suddenly opening before a lad of 17 years of age, the son of a poor country dominie in the forest of Ettrick. "Mr. Campbell?" I stammered. And if you were in my shoes, would you go? I will mention, probably, I'm not sure if you can tell by the names, that this story, I believe, takes place in Scotland. Now, I'm not sure I can do a convincing Scottish accent. He keeps slipping into the pirate accent. So please bear with me, and if there's anyone from Scotland watching this stream, please forgive me. I am doing the best I can with dialects. Of a certainty, said the minister, that would I, and without a pause. A pretty lad like you should go to Cramond, which is near in by Edinburgh, in 2 days of walk. If the worst came to the worst, and your high relations, as I cannot but suppose them to be somewhat of your blood, should put you to the door, ye can but walk the 2 days back again, and risp at the manse door. But I would rather hope that ye shall be well received, as your poor father forecast for you, and for anything that I can come to be a great man in time. And here, Davy laddie, he resumed, it lies near upon my conscience to improve this parting, and set you on the right guard against the dangers of the world. Cool Skeleton's Scottish pirates. I don't know. Here he cast about for a comfortable seat, lighted on a big boulder under a birch by the trackside, sate down upon it with a very long, serious upper lip, and the sun now shining in upon us between two peaks, put his pocket handkerchief over his cocked hat to shelter him. Then, where was it? Where am I? Oh, there then, with uplifted forefinger, he first put me on my guard against a considerable number of heresies, to which I had no temptation, and urged upon me to be instant in my prayers and reading of the Bible. That done, he drew a picture of the great house that I was bound to, and how I should conduct myself with its inhabitants. Let me have a quick drink. My goodness. Oh, dry air. Here in the study. Excuse me. Be supple, Davy, in things immaterial, said he. Bear ye this in mind, that though gentle born, ye have a country rearing. Dinna shame us, Davy, dinna shame us. In yon great muckle house, with all these domestics, upper and under, show yourself as nice as circumspect, as quick as the conception, and as slow speech as any. As for the laird, remember he's the lard. I say no more. Honour to whom honour. It's a pleasure to obey a laird. Ours should be to the young. Well, sir, said I, it may be, and I promise you I'll try to make it so. Why, very well said, replied Mr. Campbell heartily. And now to come to the material, or, to make a quibble, to the immaterial. I have here a little packet which contains 4 things. He tugged it as he spoke with some great difficulty from the skirt pocket of his coat. Of these 4 things, the first is your legal due, the little pickle money for your father's books, and pleshing which I have bought, as I have explained from the first, in the design of reselling at a profit to the incoming dominie. The other 3 are gifties that Mrs. Campbell and myself would be blithe of your acceptance. The first, which is round, will likely please ye best at the first off go. But oh, Davy laddie, it's but a drop of water in the sea. It'll help you but a step, and vanish like the morning. The second, which is flat and square and written upon, will stand by you through life, like a good staff for the road, and a good pillow to your head in sickness. And as for the last, which is cubical, that'll see you. It's my prayerful wish into a better land. Darth, so there's a couple famous Scottish pirates. Yes, I looked it up. Oh, wonderful! I have no doubt that there are. That is interesting, Darth. Is any worth noting? Love to hear that. Yeah, I'd love. I cannot talk tonight. I do not know why. Tripping over my own omniversal tongue. Excuse me. But yes, that is interesting, Darth. Thank you for looking that up. With that, he got upon his feet, took off his hat, and prayed a little while aloud, and in affecting terms, for a young man setting out into the world. Then suddenly took me in his arms and embraced me very hard, then held me at arm's length, looking at me with his face all working with sorrow, and then whipped about and crying good-bye to me set off backward by the way that we had come at a sort of jogging run. It might have been laughable to another, but I was in no mind to laugh. I watched him as long as he was in sight, and he never stopped hurrying, nor once looked back. Then it came in upon my mind that this was all his sorrow at my departure, and my conscience smote me hard and fast, because I, for my part, was overjoyed to get away out of that quiet countryside, and go to a great busy house among rich and respectable gentlefolk of my own name and blood. Davy, Davy, I thought, was ever seen such black ingratitude? Can you forget old favors and old friends at the mere whistle of a name? Fie, fie! Think shame! And I sat down on the boulder the good man had just left, and opened the parcel to see the nature of my gifts. Darth, one of them was Ruairi Og MacNeil. Now that is a Scottish name if I ever heard one. Interesting. Interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of him. That which he had called cubicle, I had never had much doubt of. Sure enough, it was a little Bible to carry in a plaid nook. That which he had called round, I found to be a shilling piece, which actually is quite a bit of money back then. And the third, which was to help me so wonderfully both in health and sickness all the days of my life, was a little piece of coarse yellow paper, written upon this thus in red ink: To make lily of the valley water. Take the flowers of lily of the valley and distill them in sack, and drink a spoonful or two as there is occasion. It restores speech to those that have the dumb palsy. It is good against the gout. It comforts the heart and strengthens the memory. And the flowers put into a glass, close stop, and set into an hill of ants for a month. Then take it out, and you will find a liquor which comes from the flowers, which keep in a vial. It is good, ill or well, and wither, man or woman. That's interesting. Wonder if that was actually possible to make. And then in the minister's own hand was added, likewise for sprains rub it in, and for the colic a great spoonful in the hour. Darth. Another one was Thor. Uh, I'm gonna butcher this name. Thorbjorn Thorstensson. One of the Vikings. I see, I see. To be sure, I laughed over this, but it was rather tumultuous laughter, and I was glad to get my bundle on my staff's end, and set out over the ford and up the hill upon the further side, till, just as I came on the green drove road running wide through the heather, I took my last look of Kirk Ediston, the trees above the manse, and the big rowans in the kirkyard where my father and my mother lay. Another drink of water. Oh my goodness. Mm. Chapter 2. I come to my journey's end. On the forenoon of the second day, coming to the top of a hill, I saw all the country fall away before me down to the sea, and in the midst of this descent on a long ridge, the city of Edinburgh smoking like a kiln. There was a flag upon the castle, and ships moving or laying anchored in the firth, both of which, for as far away as they were, I could distinguish clearly, and both brought my country heart into my mouth. Darth, I may or may not have put that sec-on name to mildly torture you. To be fair, I'd butcher a name like that also. Well, it is a tongue twister of a name, that's for sure. Presently, after I came by a house where a shepherd lived, and got a rough direction for the neighborhood of Craymond, and so from one to another worked my way to the westward of the capital by Cullenton, till I came out upon the Glasgow road, and there, to my great and pleasure and wonder, I beheld a regiment marching to the fifes, every foot in time, an old red-faced general on a grey horse at the one end, and at the other the company of grenadiers with their pope's hats. The pride of life seemed to mount into my brain at the sight of the redcoats, and the hearing of that merry music. A little, eh, a little farther on, and I was told I was in Craymond parish, and began to substitute in my inquiries the name of the house of Shaws. It was a word that seemed to surprise those of whom I sought my way. At first I thought the plainness of my appearance in my country habit, and that all dusty from the road, consorted ill with the greatness of the place to which I was bound. But after two, maybe three, had given me the same look and the same answer, I began to take it into my head there was something strange about the Shaws itself. Excuse me. The better to set this fear at rest, I changed the form of my inquiries, and spying an honest fellow coming along a lane on the shaft of his cart, I asked him if he had ever heard tell of a house they called the House of Shaws. He stopped his cart and looked at me like the others. "Aye," said he. "What for?" "It's a great house?" I asked. "Doubtless," says he. "The house is a big muckle house." "Aye," said I, "but the folk that are in it." "Folk!" cried he. "Ah, ye daft! There nine folk there, to call folk." "What?" say I. "Not Mr. Ebenezer?" "Oui, aye," says the man. "There's the lad, to be sure. If it's him you're wanting, what'll like be your business, manny?" "I was led to think I would get a situation," I said, looking as modest as I could. "What?" cries the carter, in so sharp a note that his very horse started, and then, "Well, manny," he added, "it's none of my affairs, but ye seem a decent spoken lad, and if ye'll take a word from me, ye'll keep clear of the Shaws." The next person I came across was a dapper little man in a beautiful white wig, whom I saw to be a barber on his rounds. And knowing well that barbers were great gossips, I asked him plainly what sort of a man was Mr. Balfour of the Shaws. "Hoot, hoot, hoot," said the barber. "Nae kind of a man, nae kind of a man at all," and began to ask me very shrewdly what my business was. But I was more than a match for him at that, and he went on to his next customer, no wiser than he came. Okay, I'm really enjoying doing some of the voices for this one. I cannot well describe the blow this dealt to my illusions. The more indistinct the accusations were, the less I liked them, for they left the wider field to fancy. What kind of a great house was this, that all the parish should start and stare to be asked the way to it? Or what sort of a gentleman, that his ill fame should be thus current on the wayside? If an hour's walking would have brought me back to Essendine, I had left my adventure then and there, and returned to Mr. Campbell's. But when I had come so far already, mere shame would not suffer me to desist, till I had put the matter to the touch of proof. I was bound out of mere self-respect to carry it through, And little as I liked the sound of what I heard, and slow as I began to travel, I still kept asking my way, and still kept advancing. Honestly, I don't think I'd go any further if given the way that everyone is talking about this place, there has to be something wrong. You know? Darth, the Scotch voices you're pulling off are gonna make me die from laughing so hard. I don't know if that's a compliment or not. Scotch accents make me laugh, and you pull off a pretty good one, Matsu. Okay, I'll take that as a compliment. I've tried. It's hard because I don't want to make it too broad or too bad. It was drawing on to sundown when I met a stout, dark, sour-looking woman coming trudging down a hill. And she, when I had put my usual question, turned sharp about, accompanied me back to the summit she had just left, and pointed to a great bulk of buildings standing very bare upon a green at the bottom of the next valley. The country was pleasant round about, running in low hills, pleasantly watered and wooded, and the crops to my eyes wonderfully good. But the house itself appeared to be a kind of ruin. No road led up to it, no smoke arose from any of the chimneys, nor was there any semblance of a garden. My heart sank. "That!" I cried. The woman's face lit up with a malignant anger. "That is the house of Shaw's!" she cried. "Blood built it. Blood stopped the building of it. Blood shall bring it down. See here!" she cried again. "I spit upon the ground, and crack my thumb at it. Black be its fall. If ye see the lad, tell him what ye hear. Tell him this makes the 1219 time that Janet Closton has called down the curse on him and his house, briar and stable, man, guest, and master, wife, miss, or bairn. Black, black be their fall." And the woman, whose voice had ridden to a kind of eldritch sing-song. Oh my goodness, they used the term eldritch in this story. Oh, I think this is the first time I've seen this word being used outside of Lovecraftian tales. Turned with a skip and was gone. I stood where she left me with my hair on end. In those days, folks still believed in witches and trembled at a curse. And this one, falling so pat like a wayside omen, to rest me ere I carried out my purpose, took the pith out of my legs. I sat down and stared at the house of Shaw's. The more I looked, the pleasanter that countryside appeared, being all set with hawthorn bushes full of flowers, the fields dotted with sheep, a fine flight of rooks in the sky, and every sign of a kind of soil and climate, and yet the barrack in the midst of it went sore against my fancy. Country folk went by from the fields as I sat there on the side of the ditch, but I lacked the spirit to give them a good 'un. At last the sun went down, and then right up against the yellow sky I saw a scroll of smoke go mounting, not much thicker, as it seemed to me, than the smoke of a candle, but still there it was, and meant a fire, and warmth, and cookery, and some living inhabitant that must have lit it, and this comforted my heart. So I set forward by a little faint track in the grass that led in my direction. It was very faint indeed to be the only way to a place of habitation, yet I saw no other. Presently it brought me to stone uprights, with an unroofed lodge beside them, and coats of arms upon the top. A main entrance it was plainly meant to be, but never finished. Instead of gates of wrought iron, a pair of hurdles were tied across with a straw rope. And there was no park walls nor any sign of avenue. The track I was following passed on the right of the pillars and went wandering on toward the house. The nearer I got to that, the dreader it appeared. It seemed like the one wing of a house that had never been finished. What would have been the inner end stood open on the upper floors, and showed against the sky with steps and stairs of uncompleted masonry. Many of the windows were unglazed, and bats flew in and out like doves out of a dove's cot. Excuse me. The night had begun to fall as I got close, and in three of the lower windows, which were very high up and narrow, and well barred, the changing light of a little fire began to glimmer. Was this the palace I had been coming to? Was it within these walls that I was to seek new friends and begin great fortunes? Why, in my father's house on Essen Waterside, the fire and the bright lights would show a mile away, and the doors open to a beggar's knock? I came forward cautiously, and giving ear as I came, heard someone rattling with dishes, and a little dry, eager cough that came in fits, but there was no sound of speech, and not a dog barked. Again, I would just leave at this point. Obviously, something's up with this location. The door, as well as I could see it in the dim light, was a great piece of wood all studded with nails. I lifted my hand with a faint heart under my jacket, and knocked once. Then I stood and waited. The house had fallen into a dead silence. A whole minute passed away, and nothing stirred but the bats overhead. I knocked again, and hearkened again, and hearkened again. Hmm. By this time my ears had grown so accustomed to the quiet that I could hear the ticking of the clock inside as it slowly counted out the seconds. But whoever was in that house kept deathly still and must have held his breath. 1 second, my dear scholars. Well, if you can find him, bring him back. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that, my dear scholars. Random visitor just wandered into the reading room. Um, he looked over at me and suddenly started screaming something about starry-eyed demons. Yeah, I sent Virgil and Ovid off to find him. I think he ran down one of the hallways. Um, which on second thought, might have been not a great idea. Yeah. Anyway, let's continue our story. Where was I? Oh yeah. By this time my ears had grown so accustomed to the quiets that I could hear the ticking of the clock inside as it slowly counted out the seconds. But whoever was in that house kept deadly still, and must have held his breath. I was in two minds whether to run away, but anger got the upper hand, and I began instead to rain kicks and buffets on the door, and to shout out aloud for Mr. Balfour. I was in full career when I heard the cough right overhead, and jumping back and looking up, beheld a man's head in a tall nightcap, and the bell mouth of a blunderbuss at one of the first-story windows. "It's loaded," said a voice. "I have come here with a letter," I said, "to Mr. Ebenezer Balfour of Shaw's. Is he here?" Excuse me. "From whom is it?" asked the man with the blunderbuss. "That is neither here nor there," said I, for I was growing very wroth. Kintron, don't they always? Yeah, the book squids, they tend to cause some trouble. I mean, a few days back, we had a whole swarm of them. We only managed to chase them off because, Virgil grabbed as many brooms as he could carry in each of his tentacles and waved them about and chased them away. Oh, that was a harrowing moment. "Well," was the reply, "ye can put it down upon the doorstep, and be off with ye." "I will do no such thing," I cried. "I will deliver it into Mr. Balfour's hands, as it was meant I should. It is a letter of introduction." "A what?" cried the voice sharply. I repeated what I had said. "Who are ye yourself?" was the next question, after a considerable pause. "I am not ashamed of my name," said I. "They call me David Balfour." At that I made sure the man started, for I heard the blunderbuss rattle on the window sill, and it was after quite a long pause, and with a curious change of voice, that the next question followed. "Is your father dead?" I was so much surprised at this that I could find no voice to answer, but stood staring. "Aye," the man resumed, "he'll be dead, no doubt, and that'll be what brings ye chopping to my door." Another pause, and then defiantly, "Well, man," he said, I'll let ye in," and he disappeared from the window. Oh, goodness. I don't know, this seems kind of ominous, my dear scholars. I mean, this guy living in the middle of nowhere, suddenly he really changes his tune as soon as he understands that our hero's father's dead. It just seems wrong. Like something's wrong. Excuse me. Chapter 3. I make acquaintance of my uncle. Presently there came a great rattling of chains and bolts, and the door was cautiously opened, and shut to again behind me as soon as I had passed. "Go into the kitchen and touch nothing," said the voice, and while the person in the house set himself to replacing the defenses of the door, I groped my way forward and entered the kitchen. The fire had burned up fairly bright, and showed me the barest room I think I ever put my eyes on. Half a dozen dishes stood upon the shelves. The table was laid for supper, with a bowl of porridge, a horn spoon, and a cup of small beer. Not exactly the most tasty meal, huh? Beside what I have named, there was not another thing in that great stone-vaulted empty chamber, but lock-fast chests arranged along the wall, and a corner cupboard with a padlock. As soon as the last chain was up, the man rejoined me. He was a mean, stooping, narrow-shouldered, clay-faced creature, and his age might have been anything between 50 and 70. Darth, the beer sounds like the best part of that meal. Well, it's a small beer, so I wouldn't really be all that excited about it. Small beers tended to be not very alcoholic. They're meant to be made for a quick, easy drink more than anything. Kinchon, beer's not bad for breakfast, really. I mean, it isn't, and it was drunk during breakfast. It's not a horrible beverage for it. It's just if you're expecting the kind of beer you have nowadays, small beer is Julian 20 more of an ale. It's not even an ale. It's like you have to imagine it like imagine a beer, but imagine it just has the barest amount of alcohol in it. Just enough to give it a tang, but not enough to actually, affect you. So you're going to get more of a malty flavor than anything, rather than any of the more familiar beer tastes. Julian 20, 3 second beer. Kind of like that, yes, like that kind of beer. It's meant to be drunk by everyone. That's why the alcohol level is so low. Kinchon, fermented cereal water, basically, yes. His nightcap was of flannel, and so was the nightgown that he wore, instead of coat and waistcoat, over his ragged shirt. He was he was lawn unshaved, but what most distressed and even daunted me, he would neither take his eyes away from me, nor look me fairly in the face. What he was, withered by trade or birth, was more than I could fathom. But he seemed most like an old unprofitable serving man, who should have been left in charge of that big house upon board wages. "Are ye sharp set?" he asked, glancing at about the level of my knee. "Ye can eat that drop porridge." I said I feared it was my own supper. "Oh," said he, "I can do fine wanting it. I'll take the ale, though, for it sluckens my cough." He drank the cup about half out, still keeping an eye upon me as he drank, and then suddenly held out his hand. "Let's see the letter," said he. I told him the letter was for Mr. Balfour, not for him. "And who do you think I am?" says he. "Give me Alexander's letter." "You know my father's name?" "It would be strange if I didn't," he returned, "for he was my born brother, and little as ye seem to like either me or my house, or my good porridge, I'm your born Uncle Davy, my man, and you my born nephew. So give us the letter, and sit down and fill your kite." If I had been some years younger, what with shame, weariness, and disappointment, I believe I had burst into tears. As it was, I could find no words, neither black nor white, but handed him the letter, and sat down to the porridge with as little appetite for meat as ever a young man had. Excuse me. Meanwhile, my uncle, stooping over the fire, turned the letter over and over in his hands. "Do ye ken what's in it?" he asked suddenly. "You see for yourself, sir," said I, "that the seal has not been broken." "Aye," said he, "but what brought you here?" "To give the letter," said I. "No," says he cunningly, "but you'll have had some hopes, no doubt." "I confess, sir," said I, "when I was told that I had kinsfolk well to do, I did indeed indulge the hope that they might help me in my life. But I am no beggar. I look for no favours at your hands, and want none that are not freely given. For as poor as I appear, I have friends of my own that will be blithe to help me." "Hoot toot!" said Uncle Ebenezer. "Dinna fly up in the snuff at me. We'll agree fine yet. And Davy, my man, if you're done with that little porridge, I could just take a sup of it myself. Aye?" He continued as soon as he had ousted me from the stool and spoon. "They're fine, wholesome food. They're grand food, porridge." He murmured a little grace to himself and fell to. "Your father was very fond of his meat, I mind. He was a hardy, if not a great eater. But as for me, I could never do mair than pike at food." He took a pull at the small beer, which probably reminded him of hospitable duties, for his next speech ran thus: "If you're dry, you'll find water behind the door." To this I returned no answer, standing stiffly on my 2 feet and looking down upon my uncle with a mighty angry heart. He, on his part, continued to eat like a man under some pressure of time, and to throw out little darting glances now at my shoes, and now at my homespun stockings. Once only, when he had ventured to look a little higher, our eyes met, and no thief taken with a hand in a man's pocket could have shown more lively signals of distress. This set me in a muse, whether his timidity arose from too long a disuse of any human company, and whether, perhaps upon a little trial, it might pass off, my uncle change into an altogether different man. From this I was awakened by his sharp voice. "Your father's been long dead?" he asked. "3 weeks, sir," said I. "He was a secret man, Alexander. A secret, silent man," he continued. "He never said muckle when he was young. He'll never have spoken muckle of me." "I never knew, sir, till you told it me yourself that he had any brother." Dear me," said Ebenezer. "Not yet of Shaw's, I dare say." "Not so much as the name, sir," said I. "To think o' that," said he. "A strange nature of a man." For all that, he seemed singularly satisfied, but whether with himself or me, or with this conduct of my father's, was more than I could read. Certainly, however, he seemed to be outgrowing that distaste or ill will that he had conceived at first against my person. For presently he jumped up, came across the room behind me, and hit me a smack upon the shoulder. "We'll agree fine yet," he cried. "I'm just as glad I let you in. And now come away to bed." Oh, I read that wrong. "And now come away to your bed." To my surprise, he lit no lamp or candle, but set forth into the dark passage, groped his way, breathing deeply, up a flight of steps, and paused before a door, which he unlocked. I was close upon his heels, having stumbled after him as best I might, and then he bade me go in, for that was my chamber. I did as he bid, but paused after a few steps, and begged a light to go to bed with. "Hit tit!" said Uncle Ebenezer. "There's a fine moon." "Neither moon nor star, sir, and pitmirk," said I cannot see the bed. Picnic, according to this little note at the bottom of the page, is dark as a pit, is what they mean. Hut tut hut tut, said he. Lights in a house is a thing I dinna agree with. I unco fear the fires. Good night to ye, Davy, my man. And before I had time to add a further protest, he pulled the door to, and I heard him lock me in from the outside. Kintron, I just keep thinking McDuck. That would be interesting. An adaptation of Kidnapped with Scrooge McDuck. Uncle Ebenezer. I did not know whether to laugh or cry. The room was as cold as a well, and the bed, when I had found my way to it, as damp as a peat hag. By good fortune I had caught up my By good fortune I had caught up my bundle and my plaid, and rolling myself in the ladder, I lay down upon the floor under lee of the big bedstead, and fell speedily asleep. With the first peep of day, I opened my eyes, to find myself in a great chamber, hung with stamped leather, furnished with fine embroidered furniture, and lit by 3 fair windows. 10 years ago, or perhaps 20, it must have been as pleasant a room to lie down or awake in as a man could wish. But damp, dirt, disuse, and the mice and spiders had done their worst since then. Many of the window panes, besides, were broken, and indeed this was so common a feature in that house that I believe my great uncle must at some time have stood a siege from his indignant neighbors, perhaps with Jeanette Coston at their head. Meanwhile the sun was shining outside, and being very cold in that miserable room, I knocked and shouted till my jailer came and let me out. He carried me to the back of the house, where was a drawn well, and told me to wash my face there if I wanted. And when that was done, I made the best of my own way back to the kitchen, where he had lit the fire and was making the porridge. The table was lit with 2 bowls and 2 horn spoons, but the same single measure of small beer. Perhaps my eye rested on this particular with some surprise, and perhaps my uncle observed it, for he spoke up as if in answer to my thought, asking me if I would like to drink ale, for so he called it. It's not ale. Small beer is not ale. I told him such was my habit, but not to put himself about. Na, na, said he. I deny you nothing in reason. He fetched another cup from the shelf, and then, to my great surprise, instead of drawing more beer, he poured an accurate half from one cup to the other. There was a kind of nobleness in this that took my breath away. If my uncle was certainly a miser, he was one of that thorough breed that goes near to make the vice respectable. When he had made an end of our meal, my uncle Ebenezer unlocked a drawer, and drew out of it a clay pipe and a lump of tobacco, from which he cut one fill before he locked it up again. Then he sat down in the sun at one of the windows and silently smoked. From time to time his eyes came coasting round to me, and he shot out one of his questions. Once it was, "And your mother?" And your mother? And when I had told him that she too was dead, "Aye, she was a bonny lassie." Then after another long pause, I'm trying to read this dialect here. "Where were these friends of yours?" I'm screwing up the accent, oh no. "Where were these friends of yours?" I told him they were different gentlemen of the name of Campbell, though indeed there was only one, and that the minister, that had ever taken the least note of me. But I began to think my uncle made too light of my position, and finding myself all alone with him, I did not wish him to suppose me helpless. He seemed to turn this over in his mind, and then,
"Davy, my man," said he, "you've come to the right bit when you came to your Uncle Ebenezer. I've a great notion of the family, and I mean to do the right by you. But while I'm taking a bit think to myself what's the best thing to put you to. Whether the law, the ministry, or maybe the army. Work is what boys are fondest of. I winna like the Belfors to be humbled before a wheen Highland Campbells, and I'll ask ye to keep your tongue within your teeth. Nae letters, nae messages, no kind of word to onybody, or else there's me door."
Uncle Ebenezer, Uncle Ebenezer, said I, I've no manner of reason to suppose you mean anything but well for me. For all that, I would have you to know that I have a pride of my own. It was by no will of mine that I came seeking you. If you show me your door again, I'll take you at the word. He seemed grievously put out.
"Hoots toots,"
said he.
Can a man can abide a day or two. I'm nae warlock to find a fortune for you in the bottom of a porridge bowl. But just you give me a day or two, and say nothing to nobody, and as sure I'll do the right by you."
Very well, said I. Enough said. If you want to help me, there's no doubt, but I'll be glad of it, and none but I'll be grateful. It seemed to me, too soon I dare say, that I was getting the upper hand of my uncle, and I began next to say that I must have the bed and bedclothes aired and put to sundry, for nothing would make me sleep in such a pickle.
"Is this my house or yours?"
said he in his keen voice. Darth, this Ebenezer sounds just as grumpy as Scrooge McDuck. It does. There's something really, really off about him too. I would not trust him one moment, said he in his keen voice, and then all of a sudden broke off.
"Nay,
said he.
I didn't mean that. What's mine is yours, Davy, my man, and what's yours is mine. Blood's thicker than water, and that's naebody but ye and me that ought the name."
And then on he rambled about the family and its ancient greatness, and his father that began to enlarge the house, and himself that stopped the building as a sinful waste. And this put it in my head to give him Jeanette Colston's message.
"Deliver!" he cried. 1200.
Try. Okay, so scholars, the dialogue in this is written in dialect. So if you hear me stumbling, it's because Robert Louis Stevenson is writing it in kind of a Scottish dialect for the pronunciation. So it's a little bit. It's easy to fumble over.
1215. That's every day since I had the liver roe pit. Dod, Davy. I'll have her roasted on red peats before I'm by with it. A witch, a proclaimed witch. I'll laugh and see the session clock.
And with that he opened a chest and got out a very old and well-preserved blue coat and waistcoat, and a good enough beaver hat, both without lace. These he threw on anyway, and taking a staff from the cupboard, locked it all up again, and was for setting out, when a thought arrested him.
"I cannot leave you by yourself in the house," said he. "I'll have to lock you out."
The blood came to my face. "If you lock me out," I said, "it'll be the last you'll see of me in friendship." He turned very pale and sucked his mouth in.
This is no the way," he said, looking wickedly at a corner of the floor. "This is no the way to win my favour, David."
"Sir," says I. With a proper reverence for your age and our common blood, I do not value your favor at a bottle's purchase. I was brought up to have a good conceit of myself, and if you were all the uncle and all the family I had in the world 10 times over, I wouldn't buy your liking at such prices. Uncle Ebenezer went and looked out of the window for a while. I could see him all trembling and twitching, like a man with palsy. But when he turned round, he had a smile upon his face.
Well, well, said he, we must bear and forbear. I'll no go. That's all that's to be said of it.
Uncle Ebenezer, I said, I can make nothing out of this. You use me like a thief. You hate to have me in this house. You let me see it, every word and every minute. It's not possible you can like me. And as for me, I've spoken to you as I never thought to speak to any man. Why do you seek to keep me, then? Let me gain back. Let me gain back to the friends I have, and that like me.
Na 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 na.
He said very earnestly.
I like you fine. We'll agree fine yet. And for the honour of the house, I couldn't let you leave the way you came. Bide here quiet. There's a good lad. Just you bide here quiet a bittle, and you'll find that we agree.
Well, sir, said I, after I had thought the matter over in silence, I'll stay a while. It's more just I should be helped by my own blood than strangers, and if we don't agree, I'll do my best it shall be through no fault of mine. Well, I'm sure everything will turn out well for David. Let me get a little drink of water. I mean, now that he's smoothed out things with his uncle, I'm certain that nothing will go wrong. Chapter 4. I run a great danger in the house of Shaws. Oh, for the love of book. Well. Oh, thank you for the posture check, Ulian20. Ooh. Oh, whoa. Lean a little too forward. Excuse me. I'm just checking something here, how long this chapter is. Okay. We might have time enough for 2 more chapters. We'll see. For a day that was begun so ill, the day passed fairly well. We had the porridge cold again at noon, and hot porridge at night. Porridge and small beer was my uncle's diet. He spoke but little, and that in the same way as before, shooting a question at me after a long silence, and when I sought to lead him in talk about my future, slipped out of it again. In a room next door to the kitchen, where he suffered me to go, I found a great number of books, both Latin and English, in which I took great pleasure all the afternoon. Indeed, the time passed so lightly in this good company that I began to be almost reconciled to my residence at Shaw's, and nothing but the sight of my uncle and his eyes playing hide and seek with mine revived the force of my distrust. Excuse me. Excuse me. Again. One thing I discovered which put me in some doubt. This was an entry on the flyleaf of a chapbook, one of Patrick Walker's, plainly written by my father's hand, and thus conceived. To my brother Ebenezer on his 5th birthday. Now what puzzled me was this, that as my father was of course the younger brother, he must either have made some straight... Oh my goodness. Oh. Ovid, did you hear that? Oh, it's that. Okay. Sorry about that. If you heard a buzzing noise, that was Ovid was working in the machine room. Well, one of the machine rooms. What room was that? Oh. Okay. Why are you in that room? Oh, well. It looks like they're still hunting for the for our little visitor, and unfortunately, Ovid went into the Buzz room, which is filled with books that buzz when you open them. I never quite understood that. Yeah. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah. That as my father was of course the younger brother, he must either have made some strange error, or he must have written before he was yet 5, in excellent, clear, manly hand of writing. I somewhat doubt that. I tried to get this out of my head, but though I took down many interesting authors, old and new, history, poetry, and storybook, this notion of my father's hand of writing stuck to me. And when at length I went back into the kitchen and sat down once more to porridge and small beer, the first thing I said to Uncle Ebenezer was to ask him if my father had not been very quick at his book.
Alexander, know him, was the reply. I was far quicker myself. I was a clever chappie when I was young. Why, I could read as soon as he could.
This puzzled me yet more, and a thought coming into my head, I asked if he and my father had been twins. He jumped up upon his stool, and the horn spoon fell out of his hand upon the floor.
What gars ye ask that?
He said, and he caught me by the breast of the jacket, and looked this time straight into my eyes. His own were little and light and bright like a bird's, blinking and winking strangely. "What do you mean?" I asked very calmly, for I was far stronger than. "What do you mean?" I asked very calmly, for I was far stronger than he, and was not easily frightened. "Take your hand from my jacket. That is no way to behave." My uncle seemed to make a great effort upon himself.
Dod, yeah, Dod, man, David, he said. Ye shouldn't have tossed. You shouldn't speak to me about your father. That's where the mistake is.
He sat a while and shook, blinking in his plate.
He was all the brother that ever I had,
he added, but with no heart in his voice, and then caught up his spoon and fell to supper again, but still shaking. Now, this last passage, this laying of hands upon my person, and sudden profession of love for my dead father, went so clean beyond my comprehension that it put me into both fear and hope. On the one hand, I began to think my uncle was perhaps insane, and might be dangerous. On the other, there came up into my mind, quite unbidden by me, even discouraged, a story like some ballad I had heard folks singing, of a poor lad that was a right flare, and a wicked kinsman that tried to keep him from his own. For why should my uncle play a part with a relative that came, almost a beggar, to his door, unless in his heart he had some cause to fear him? Excuse me. With this notion, all unacknowledged, but nevertheless getting firmly settled in my head, I now began to imitate his covert looks, so that we sat at a table like a cat and mouse, each stealthily observing the other. Not another word had he to say to me, black or white, but was busy turning something secretly over in his mind. And the longer we sat, and the more I looked at him, the more certain I became that the something was unfriendly to myself. When he had cleared the platter, he got out a single pipeful of tobacco, just as in the morning, turned round a stool into the chimney corner, and sat a while, smoking, with his back to me.
Davy, he said at length, I've been thinking.
Then he paused and said it again.
There's a wee bit siller that I half promised ye before ye were born, he continued. Promised it to your father. Oh, nothing legal, ye understand. Just gentlemen daffing at their wine. Well, I keep that bit money separate. It was a great expense, but a promise is a promise, and it has grown by now to be a matter of just exactly.
And here he paused and stumbled.
Of just exactly £40.
This last he rapped out with a sidelong glance over his shoulder, and the next moment added, almost with a scream, Scots! The pound Scots being the same as an English shilling, the difference made by this second thought was considerable. I could see besides that the whole story was a lie, invented with some end, which it puzzled me to guess, and I made no attempt to conceal the tone of reality in which I answered. Oh, think again, sir. Pound sterling, I believe.
That's what I said, returned my uncle. Pounds sterling. And if you'll step out by the door a minute, just to see what kind of a night it is, I'll get it out to ye and call ye in again.
I did as well, smiling to myself in my contempt that he should think I was so easy to be deceived. It was a dark night, with a few stars low down, and as I stood just outside the door I heard a hollow moaning of wind far off among the hills. I said it to myself that there was something thundery and changeful in the weather, and little knew of what a vast importance that should prove to me before the evening passed. When I was called in again, my uncle counted out into my hand 37 golden guinea pieces. So, little fun fact here. Um, so the guinea isn't actually a proper measure of unit, I believe. A guinea is just a certain amount of high value pounds or pounds sterling. Um, I think actually, I take that back. I think at one point it was a measurement, but then it turned into slang term for just a lot of pounds. And a pound back then in 17, what was it, 1759? I think. 1751. A pound in 1751, especially that amount, was a lot of money, especially pound sterling. The rest was in his hand in small gold and silver, but his heart failed him there, and he crammed the change into his pocket.
There, said he, that'll show you. I'm a queer man and strange at strangers, but my word is my bond, and there's the proof of it.
Now, my uncle seemed so miserly that I was struck dumb by this sudden generosity, and could find no words in which to thank him.
Not a word, said he. Nae thanks, I want nae thanks. I do my duty. I'm no saying that everybody would have done it, but for my part, though I'm a careful body too, it's a pleasure to me to do the right by my brother's son, and a pleasure to me to think that now we'll agree that's as such near friends should.
I spoke him in return as handsomely as I was able, but all the while I was wondering what would come next, and why he had parted with his precious guineas, for as to the reason he had given, a baby would have refused it. Presently he looked towards me sideways.
And see here, says he, tit for tat.
I told him I was ready to prove my gratitude in any reasonable degree, and then he waited, looking for some monstrous demand. And yet, when at last he plucked up courage to speak, it was only to tell me, very properly as I thought, that he was growing old and a little broken, and that he would expect me to help him with the house and the bit of garden. I answered and expressed my readiness to serve.
Well, he said, let's begin.
He pulled out of his pocket a rusty key.
There, he says. There's the key of the stair tower at the far end of the house. You can only win into it from the outside, for that part of the house is no finished. Gain ye in there, and up the stairs, and bring me down the chest that's at the top. There's papers in it, he added.
Can I have a light, sir? Said I.
Nay,
Said he very cunningly.
nae lights in my house.
Very well, sir, said I. Are the stairs good?
They're grand,
Said he. And then as I was going,
keep to the wall, he added. There's nae banisters, but the stairs are grand underfoot.
out I went into the night. The wind was still moaning in the distance, though never a breath of it came near the house of Shaw's. It had fallen blacker than ever, and I was glad to feel along the wall, till I came the length of the stair tower door at the far end of the unfinished wing. I had got the key into the keyhole and had just turned it, when all upon a sudden, without a sound of wind or thunder, the whole sky lighted up with wildfire and went black again. I had to put my hand over my eyes to get back to the color of the darkness, and indeed I was already half blinded when I stepped into the tower. It was so dark inside. It seemed a body could scarce breathe, but I pushed out with foot and hand, and presently struck the wall with the other, and the lowermost round of the stair with the other. I need some more water. I don't know why, but my throat is very dry tonight. I think this might be the last chapter for the night. Minding my uncle's word about the banisters, I kept close to the tower side and felt my way in the pitch darkness with a beating heart. Oh, thank you for the hydrate, cool skeleton. Guess I'm hydrating again. Oh, my goodness. The house of Shaw's stood The house of Shaw's stood 5 full stories high, not counting lofts. Well, as I advanced, it seemed to me the stair grew airier and a thought more lightsome, and I was wondering what might be the cause of this change, when a sudden blink of the summer lightning came and went. If I did not cry out, it was because fear had me by the throat, and if I did not fall, it was more by heaven's mercy than my own strength. It was not only that the flash shone in on every side through breaches in the wall, so that I seemed to be clambering aloft upon an open scaffold, but the same passing brightness showed me the steps were of unequal length, and that one of my feet rested that moment within 2 inches of the wall. Oh my goodness. What was he planning to do? Cool skeleton, hydration is important. It is very important. Never forget to hydrate, my dear scholars. This was the grand stair, I thought, and with the thought a gust of a kind of angry courage came into my heart. My uncle had sent me here, certainly, to run great risks, perhaps to die. I swore I would settle that perhaps if I should break my neck for it. Got me up down upon my hands and knees, and as slowly as a snail, feeling before me every inch and testing the solidity of every stone, I continued to ascend the stair. Kintron, Cool Skeleton knows all about hydration. He doesn't like being And here we are, the first pun of the night. Thank you, Kintron. Thank you. Doesn't like being bone dry. You all task me so much. The darkness, by contrast with the flash, appeared to have redoubled. Nor was that, for my ears were now troubled, and my mind confounded by a great stir of bats in the top part of the tower, and the foul beasts flying downward, sometimes best beat upon my face and body. Darth, bravo, bravo, don't encourage him! Don't! The tower, I should have said, was square, and in every corner the step was made of a great stone of a different shape, to join the flights. Well, I had come close to one of these turns, when, feeling forward as usual, my hand slipped upon an edge and found nothing but emptiness beyond it. The stair had been carried no higher. To set a stranger mounting in it, yeah, to set a stranger mounting it in darkness was to send him straight to his death. And although, thanks to the lightning and my own precautions, I was safe enough, the mere thought of the peril in which I might have stood and the dreadful height I might have fallen from brought out the sweat upon my body and relaxed my joints. Cool Skeleton, did you know that right now all you fleshies have wet bones? That's all. Well, I don't really have bones, but yeah, technically yes, that is absolutely true. Darth, I wonder if Cool Skeleton is bad to the bone. Oh well. What can I say? But I knew what I wanted now, and turned and groped my way down again with a wonderful anger in my heart. About halfway down, the wind sprang up in a clap and shook the tower and died again. The rain followed, and before I had reached the ground level, it fell in buckets. I put out my head into the storm and looked along towards the kitchen. The door, which I had shut behind me when I left, now stood open and shed a little glimmer of light, and I thought I could see a figure standing in the rain, quite still, like a man hearkening. And then there came a blinding flash, which showed me my uncle plainly, just where I had fancied him to stand, and hard upon the heels of it a great tow row of thunder. Now, whether my uncle thought the crash to be the sound of my fall, or whether he heard it in God's voice denouncing murder, I will lead you to guess. Certain it is, at least, that he was seized on by a kind of panic fear, and that he ran into the house and left the door open behind him. I followed as softly as I could, coming unheard into the kitchen, stood and watched him. He had found time to open up the corner cupboard and bring out a great case bottle of aqua vitae, and now sat with his back towards me at the table. Ever and again he would be seized with a fit of deadly shuddering, and groan aloud, and carrying the bottle to his lips, drank down the raw spirits by the mouthful. Oh my goodness. That would be absolutely horrible. I stepped forward, came close behind him where he sat, and suddenly clapping my two hands down upon his shoulders. "Ah!" cried I. My uncle gave a kind of broken cry like a sheep's bleat, flung up his arms, and tumbled to the floor like a dead man. I was somewhat shocked at this, but I had myself to look to first of all, and did not hesitate to let him lie as he had fallen. The keys were hanging in the cupboard, and it was my design to furnish myself with arms before my uncle should come again to his senses, and the power of devising evil. In the cupboard were a few bottles, some apparently of medicine, a great many bills and other papers, which I should willingly enough have rummaged, had I had the time, and a few necessities that were nothing to my purpose. Thence I turned to the chests. The first was full of meal, the second of money bags and papers tied into sheaves, in the third with many other things, and these for the most part of clothes. I found a rusty, ugly-looking Highland dirk without the scabbard. This then I concealed inside my waistcoat, and turned to my uncle. He lay as he had fallen, all huddled with one knee up, and one arm sprawling abroad. One arm sprawling abroad. His face had a strange color of blue, and he seemed to have ceased breathing. Fear came on me that he was dead. Then I got water and dashed it in his face, and with that he seemed to come a little to himself, working his mouth and fluttering his eyelids. At last he looked up and saw me, and there came into his eyes a terror that was not of this world. "Come, come," said I, "sit up."
"Are you alive?"
he sobbed.
"Oh, man, are ye alive?"
"That I am," said I. "Small thanks to you." He had begun to seek for his breath with deep sighs.
"The blue vial," said he. "In the armory, that blue vial."
His breath came slower still. I ran to the cupboard and sure enough found there a blue vial of medicine with the dose written on it on a paper, and this I administered to him with what speed I might.
"It's the trouble,"
said he, reviving a little.
"I have a trouble, Davy. It's the heart."
I set him on a chair and looked at him. It is true I felt some pity for a man that looked so sick, but I was full besides of righteous anger, and numbered over before him the points on which I wanted explanation. Why he lied to me at every word, why he feared that I should leave him, why he disliked to be hinted that he and my father were twins. Is that because it is true? I asked. Why he had given me money to which I was convinced I had no claim, and last of all, why he had tried to kill me. He heard me all through in silence, and then in a broken voice begged me to let him go to bed.
"I'll tell ye the morn,"
he said,
"as sure as death I will."
and so weak was he that I could do nothing but consent. I locked him into his room, however, and pocketed the key, and then returning to the kitchen made up such a blaze as had not shone there for many a long year, and wrapping myself in my plaid, lay down upon the chests and fell asleep. And we will stop there for the night, my dear scholars. Ooh, something's going down in the Shaws. I wonder what that uncle of his is up to. So, my dear scholars, what do you think of our stories so far? Julian 20, great reading, thank you. Yes, thank you. It's very different from Treasure Island, that's for sure. Very different story. I'm curious to see what you all think of it so far. Julian 20, totally. Yes, yes. It's a little more slow moving, I think. Well, kind of. I mean, I'm wondering when the title is going to come into play, because for now, it seems like to be it seems to be a huge cat and mouse game between David and the uncle. Unit 20, I think more interesting. What do you think is more interesting, Kidnapped or Treasure Island? I need some context here. Unit 20, Kidnapped. Ooh, interesting, interesting. Um, again, I'll tell you all what the critics thought about it once we finish the book, but it is interesting what the critics thought of this book when it came out. So yes, let's next week then. Next week we will be playing more Psychonauts on Tuesday, I hope. And if everything goes according to plan, we'll read more Kidnapped on Thursday. And if if everything goes according to plan and everything happens as it's supposed to, um, I will be doing part of the collab, the Dracula collab, at Aseo's stream. For those, I'll give a shout out to Aseo so you know the channel. For those who don't, I can't tell. think I spelled it. There we go. Aseo, we'll be doing a continuing the Dracula collab as far as I know, and that'll be on Sunday at about 4 o'clock. Cool skeleton. Yee! I knew you'd be excited about Psychonauts again. I've enjoyed that game. So let's see who we can raid tonight before we go. Let's raid Jewelry Jelly. She is playing Kirby and the Forgotten Land, I think? Forgotten Realm. Um, she's not a VTuber, but she is a good friend of the study. So we will raid her tonight. So, my dear scholars, I say unto you, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Till we meet each other again as a study. Take care, and I shall see you next time. Till then, farewell and bye bye.